Now let's see what we can do to style this properly. So I'm going to inspect this element. And as you can see, the HTML structure is very different than just a single select. So what we're looking at here is actually a text input now, and it's inside some nested divs. Here's our select that we created, but now it has a style of display none, so it's actually totally hidden. So what we need to do at this point is figure out what we need to style and style it. So first of all, it looks like we have this outer div. It grabbed the class from our original select element, and it added selectize, control, and single classes to it. Now let's see what happens if we try to style this. So let's add a background color of red. Okay, if we do that, we see that this isn't the div that's going to allow us to change the background color to what we see up here. It's actually a wrapper for a different part of the select. So if we select the inner div here, this is probably what we're looking for. So let's try editing the styles for this div. Okay, so if we change the background color to purple, we see it change here. Okay, so what selector should we use here? Well, we now have two elements that share the same class, contact form interest, but they're two different HTML elements. So if we wanted to apply styles to the div and not the select, then we could use a compound element using div dot and then this class. And then from there, we can use children selectors or descendant selectors to style anything inside that we need to. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to go back to our editor here, and I'm going to re-add all of these styles, and we'll evaluate which ones we can remove in just a minute. But I'm going to cut this out, and I'll paste it down here and change the selector to div.contactForm interest. So we do want the background color to be the light gray. We want the medium gray border. It looks like the width is actually being set to 100 already, so let's remove that. Let's remove the box sizing unless we know that we actually need it. Let's keep the padding for now. We probably need the font size again. We'll leave the border radius, the letter spacing. Let's remove the height for now, and let's remove the text indent. Let's save this and refresh the browser. Ah, right. So we had just discovered that we actually wanted to edit the containing div here. So the class is selectize input. So we'll use the div.contactFormInterest, but then let's add a nested class here for selectize input, and we'll add the styles to that instead. Save it, refresh. Okay, so this is looking better. The font size isn't carrying, and let's see what's happening there. So we'll inspect this element. So this is the input inside of the selectize input div. And if we scroll down the styles over here, we should see a font size at some point. And here it is. So we'll need to override that. The selector that's being used is selectize input input. So let's follow suit with that in here, and we'll choose the selectize input, and then we'll type input to nest it in. And let's move the font size over to it. We'll paste that in and refresh. All right, so this is looking good. Now it feels like there's a little too much padding. Let's see where all the space is coming from. So here's our input, and there's no padding in there. So we may actually want to move the padding from the outside element into there, since that's kind of our intention. The selectize input div has all of our padding. If we scroll down, we can see our padding that we're setting here. So we can probably just reduce that padding to give it a similar size to what's here. Again, what we had done before was we just duplicated the padding from our text area, and it's not the same inside of our select. Now the one other visual thing that's different, and we can zoom in a bit to see this, is that there's a bit of a shadow or an extra border up there. If we went to this element and we started scrolling down in the styles, eventually we'd run into this box shadow here. And we haven't talked about box shadows yet, but they're similar to text shadows. It's just that instead of adding the drop shadow for the text, it adds a drop shadow for the element. This one is setting an inset shadow, which means that it won't be outside the element, but actually inside. So the goal for this styling would be to make this look like it's kind of recessed back in the page a bit. If we toggle this off, we'll still see it because the browser-specific WebKit box shadow is being set, but if we unselect that, then the shadow goes away. So we'll need to override these styles as well. So these are being set in the selectize input. So let's add our styles, overriding those right here. So we'll do box shadow first, and we'll just select none. And then we'll need to also add the WebKit box shadow because it's set in the style sheet that comes with selectize. All right, and let's correct the padding. So in our actual select, we're gonna want about maybe 15 pixels on the top. And what we're seeing down here, it's about 21, so we need 6 less. So we'll go down here and change it to 6. And let's see if that's good enough. We'll refresh the browser. Okay, not bad, but it looks like the padding on the top is smaller than the padding on the bottom, and that there should be a little bit more on the top. So let's add a couple more pixels up to the top and drop a couple pixels from the bottom and see how that works. So to do that, we're going to have to adjust the padding here so that we have the top, right, bottom, and left. So we'll just copy this and paste it, and then we'll add a little bit of padding from the top. We'll add 2 pixels, and we'll drop a little padding from the bottom. We'll save this and refresh. Okay, that looks good. Let's do a quick tour of browsers to see if our new styles look good in the other browsers. So I'll go to Firefox and refresh. Okay, good. I'll go to Safari and refresh. All right, again, looks good.